Assalamu alaikum, good day. Autism and learning disabilities are more alike than apart. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Fatima, and today we'll be exploring a subject that is deeply misunderstood but crucial to so many families, educators, and caregivers across the world: autism and learning disabilities. Too often, they are treated as separate, isolated conditions, but the truth is, more often than not, they walk hand in hand. In this podcast, we'll break down what these terms really mean, how they overlap, what research tells us, and most importantly, how we can change the way we see, support, and include children and adults who live with these intersecting conditions. Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or someone simply curious, this conversation is for you. Let's understand the terms first, and let's begin with some clarity. What is autism? Autism or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person experiences the world, how they communicate, socialize, and even how they respond to sensory input. It is called a spectrum because no two autistic people are exactly alike. Some speak fluently, others are nonverbal. Some excel in math, others struggles with language. Some crave routines, others thrive in unpredictability. Now, what is a learning disability? A learning disability is not a lack of intelligence. It's a difference in the way the brain processes information. There are different types. Dyslexia, you can simply understand it as difficulty with reading, though there are other characteristics attached with it as well. Dyscalculia, difficulty with numbers; dysgraphia, difficulty with writing; processing disorders, issues with auditory or visual input. These aren't behavioral problems or laziness, they're neurological wiring differences. Now let's see how all these things overlap. Now, here's the part many people miss. Studies have shown that between 30% and 65% of autistic individuals also have at least one learning disability. The reverse is true too. Many people diagnosed with a learning disability also display traits found in autism. And why? Because autism and learning disabilities are related to how the brain develops and processes information. These are not separate conditions happening in different compartments. They are often part of the same neurodevelopmental landscape. For example, an autistic child may also struggle with reading, dyslexia. A child with ADHD and a learning disability may have strong autistic traits like sensory sensitivity or rigid routines. In educational settings, though these overlaps are rarely acknowledged, instead of a holistic understanding, many children are shuffled between specialists, one for speech, another for reading, another for behavior, without anyone seeing the full picture. Now let's look at a few real life examples. Let me tell you a story. A 9-year-old boy named Umar, diagnosed with autism, struggling with reading aloud in school. He was labeled as defiant for refusing to participate in class reading exercises. What the school didn't know, Umar had severe dyslexia. He couldn't decode the words, but no one had tested him for it. His autistic behavior was actually a trauma response to repeated humiliation. Another case, Amina, age 11. She was thought to have just a learning disability. She was bright, verbal, and loved art, but she couldn't cope with noisy classrooms, sudden changes, or understanding social cues. She was later diagnosed with autism, and everything made more sense. These aren't just rare stories, they're painfully common. The school system doesn't always get it. Most schools categorize students. You're autistic, you're dyslexic, you're slow, you're gifted, end of story. But brains don't work that way. Too often, children who are both autistic and have learning disabilities are put in classrooms that meet neither of their needs. They may be expected to behave neurotypically without support, or they may be placed in settings too basic where their cognitive strengths are ignored. There is also a gender and race bias. Girls with autism and learning disabilities are often misdiagnosed with anxiety or emotional issues. Black and brown children are more likely to be labeled as disruptive instead of neurodivergent. The system doesn't just overlook the overlap, it punishes it. Now, let's see what the research tells us. Neuroscience is clear. The brain does not develop skills in neat categories. Reading, social communication, motor planning, sensory regulation, they're all connected in complex networks. Researchers from institutions like Yale, MIT, and King's College London have shown that there are shared genetic markers between autism and learning disabilities. Sensory processing challenges are common in both groups. Executive function difficulties like painting, organizing, or shifting attention occur in both conditions. In short, autism and learning disabilities are often two sides of the same developmental coin. References with full citations are given in the YouTube description of this video. I think it's time to rethink labels. So here's the question: do these labels help or harm? Labels can offer access to support, but when they become boxes, they limit a person's identity. Instead of asking, is this autism or dyslexia? Ask, what support does this person need to thrive? How does this brain learn, communicate, and experience the world? The goal should not be a perfect diagnosis, but a perfect understanding of the individual. What's the impact on families? Families raising children with both autism and learning disabilities often feel overwhelmed and isolated. They navigate therapy appointments, school meetings, judgmental relatives, and a constant fear of the future. There is often grief, not because the child is broken, but because the world isn't ready to understand them. But there is also joy when the child reads their first sentence, says, I love you in their own way, or finds a passion in music or painting. Understanding the overlap can reduce shame and open the door to empathy. Now, what inclusion really means? Inclusion isn't just about putting children in the same room. It's about reshaping the environment, quiet corners for sensory breaks, visual supports for instruction, acceptance of alternative communication like AAC or sign language, patience with stimming or repetition. And above all, belief in the intelligence and worth of every child, regardless of how they learn. What we design for the most neurodivergent, we create classrooms where everyone benefits. What needs to change? Here's what needs to change urgently. Teacher training. Teachers should be taught to recognize the signs of both autism and learning disabilities and how they intersect. Early screening. Don't just screen for one condition, look holistically. Family support systems. Offer counseling, financial aid, and peer support groups. Stop pathologizing differences. Neurodiversity is not a problem, our systems are. Let's stop pretending autism and learning disabilities live on different islands. They exist together. And that's not a flaw, it's a fact of neurodiversity. Some of the most creative, kind, and resilient people in our world live at that intersection. Instead of fixing them, let's fix the way we see them. Let's build schools that accommodate difference, not erase it. Let's build families that embrace diversity, not hide it. Let's build societies that don't just tolerate, but celebrate every kind of mind. Let's shift the conversation from labels to lives, from diagnosis to dignity. Let's dive deep into another story that spans a century of misunderstanding, stigma, and ultimately a revolution powered by glowing screens in our hands. We'll explore how autistic children were once branded with cruel labels, how their struggles to communicate shaped their development, how today devices from simple tablets to AI driven apps are rewriting what's possible. By the end, you'll see that screens haven't isolated autistic minds, they've been bridges, teaching not just skills but pathways back into human connection. Let's begin our journey. Early 1900s, idiots and imbeciles. At the turn of the century, psychiatry lumped all intellectual and developmental differences under idiocy and imbecility. No distinction between Down syndrome, profound intellectual disability, or what we now call autism. Institutionalization was common, children locked away, little stimulation, little hope. 1940s to 50s, childhood schizophrenia. Leo Kanner's landmark 1943 paper described early infantile autism, but mainstream stuck with childhood schizophrenia. Parents terrified of a psychiatric break, children treated with antipsychotics, institutionalized for supposed psychosis. The refrigerator mother theory from 1960s to 70s. Rono Bettelheim's flawed cold mother hypothesis blamed mothers' lack of warmth for causing autism. Entire families shamed, mothers isolated, children still misunderstood as willfully withdrawn rather than neurodivergent. 1980s from PDD to DSM-4's formal recognition. In 1980, autism appeared in DSM-3 as a pervasive developmental disorder. By DSM-4 1994, subcategories like Asperger's and PDD-NOS appeared. First time autism spectrum gained official psychiatric distinction. 1990s to 2000s, inclusion versus labeling. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in the US mandated least restrictive environment, pushing autistic children into mainstream. Yet, labels like emotionally disturbed or learning disabled often misapplied, obscuring true needs. Now, let's look at the pre tech era. No standardized speech therapy, and there were few trained professionals. Nonverbal children often thought intellectually incapable. Parents taught to ignore stimming, clinical focus on forcing eye contact. Communication is the engine of social learning. Without it, children missed critical windows for language, social play, and emotional regulation. Many autistic children retreated further inward. Depression and anxiety rates spiked. Now, let's talk about a case study. Robert, 1975. Robert, nonverbal until age 9, labeled severely retarded, locked in an institution for years, minimal human interaction beyond feeding and diaper changes. When his parents fought for discharge, he barely made eye contact, showed almost no social reciprocity. Classrooms lacked one to one aids. Children sat at the back, isolated. There were no visual supports. Teacher lectured. Autistic children couldn't follow verbal only instruction. Now there is this digital dawn, first devices in therapy. 1980s, AAC boards and early computers. Picture exchange communication system emerged. Boards with symbol kids could point to. Very low tech, but for the first time, non-verbal children could make choices and express needs. 1990s desktop software, programs like Speaking Dynamically Pro enabled simple sentence building on bulky PCs. Schools With funding began pilot programs, results mixed, some kids motivated, others overwhelmed by complexity. And by 2000s, there was this rise of tablet revolution. Introduction of iPads 2010 changed everything. Touchscreen, intuitive interface, built-in speech output. Apps like Proloquio, Tugo, Avaz, Touch Chat offered immediate feedback. Children who refused human partners began interacting eagerly with devices. One mother is reported to have said that when my son touched the iPad screen and heard his own voice speak, it was the first time I truly heard him. It was like opening a door that had been locked for years. Why screens work and what does neuroscience tells us about it? Screens offer consistent, repeatable experiences. No surprise social nuance. No shifting facial expressions. Autistic brains crave consistency. Modes like gamification tap into reward circuits, boosting engagement. Many autistic learners are strong visual processors. Multimedia apps combine pictures, text, and sound for multisensory learning. fMRI studies show heightened activation in visual cortex when autistic children engage with iPads versus books. Devices can celebrate every small success, sounds, animations, fueling dopamine driven learning loops. In contrast, human feedback is often delayed or ambiguous. A 2018 study at Stanford found that iPad based speech therapy yielded a 30% faster acquisition of core vocabulary in nonverbal autistic children compared to traditional methods. Absence of human factor is freedom and not fear. Critics' concerns: screens replace face to face time. Critics warn of digital babysitting. Worries about increased social isolation, screen addiction. Now let's reframe the debate. For many autistic children, human interaction was once so fraught, unsuccessful attempts risked frustration, meltdown. Devices provided a safe sandbox to practice communication without emotional stakes. We should emphasize on guided use. Therapists and parents still set goals, monitor progress. The screen is a tool and not a replacement for all human interaction. Now, listen to this anecdote. It is about a girl, Sarah. Sarah, age 7, refused PECS boards and therapist sessions. With her tablet, she built sentences. First, I want cookie. Then, let's play. Only after months of screen mediated success did she begin short, spontaneous exchanges with peers. Devices bridge worlds. Now, here is a success story. Case study: Miguel in Brazil. Rural setting, few specialists, community center with donated tablets became lifeline. Miguel, nonverbal at age 10, recorded a 5 word sentence to thank his teacher, first audible thank you of his life. Then there was this pandemic. COVID-19 lockdowns accelerated remote therapy. Speech language pathologists ran sessions via Zoom. Children used tablets at home with parent coaching. Some improved more in 6 months online than they had in years of center based services. From screens, now back to people and learning social skills. Social skill apps. Apps like Social Detective use video modeling to teach emotion recognition, turn taking, and perspective shifting. Children watch short clips, then answer questions, reinforcing cause and effect in human interactions. Virtual reality classrooms simulate eye contact, classroom transitions, playground games, safe space to fail and retry. No real peers to judge. Therapists guide children to apply learned skills in real settings, role play with siblings after digital practice, video recorded self reviews on social behavior. Let's spend a few minutes exploring one simple yet revolutionary truth for autistic individuals and learners with disabilities. Digital devices aren't luxury extras, they're essential lifelines. First, consider the barriers many of us take for granted. Classrooms built entirely around spoken instruction, group discussions where subtle social cues trump clear content. Worksheets that demand fine motor precision from trembling hands. For a child whose brain processes information differently, these environments aren't just challenging, they are exclusionary by design. Enter devices, tablets, laptops, even smartphones recalibrated with the right apps and accessibility settings. These tools transform a one size fits none classroom into a customizable learning landscape. Want larger text? Pinch to zoom. Need auditory reinforcement? Tap for spoken feedback on every word. Struggle to sequence steps? Follow animated visual checklists that pause until you're ready. But it's more than accessibility features. Devices unlock agency. When a non-verbal autistic child taps an icon and hears his own voice, I want water, play music, that simple exchange rewrites years of silence and frustration. When a dyslexic teenager uses a text to speech app to proofread their essay, they move from self doubt to self editor, discovering their own voice in the process. Research confirms what families have long witnessed at home and in clinics. Device mediated communication accelerates vocabulary gains, improves reading fluency, and boosts confidence in ways traditional methods struggle to match. But perhaps most profound is the psychological shift. Learners go from passive recipients of instruction to active architects of their own progress. Yet, despite the evidence, access remains uneven. In well funded schools, every special classroom gleams with iPads loaded with AAC, augmentative alternative communication, and literacy apps. In under-resourced schools, devices are locked in cabinets, or worse, never arrive at all. Meanwhile, families with means invest thousands out of pocket, creating two tiers of neurodivergent learners, those who flourish with tech supports and those left behind by the digital divide. This is not acceptable. Equity demands that we treat devices not as optional assistive technology, but as fundamental educational infrastructure, just like desks, projectors, or Wi Fi. Imagine a world where every child who needs text to speech symbol boards, visual timers, or social skills games has them at their fingerprints 24/7. No application delays, no paperwork fights, just seamless support woven into daily life. When we embrace these changes, the impact goes far beyond individual learners. Classrooms become more flexible for every student. Visual timers help anxious learners and steady children keep on task. Text to speech supports boost reading for emergent readers and multilingual peers alike. Entire school communities gain resilience and inclusion. But perhaps the greatest transformation happens inside the learner. Devices shine a light on hidden strengths, pattern recognition, visual thinking, perseverance, and the scaffold challenges rather than disguising them. As autistic and disabled learners master new skills, they carry that confidence into human interactions, group projects, and the wider world. I hope you'll see devices not as mere gadgets, but as bridges from silence to speech, from confusion to clarity, from isolation to belonging. Let's commit today to making sure every learner who needs a digital ally gets one. Because when we do, we don't just teach them to read or speak, we teach them to believe in their own potential. Have a nice day, make life easy for others, Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video, and do share this video and like this video. Thank you.